Hello, everybody. My name is Ron Cansler, and we want to welcome you to another episode of a Disciple Making Church podcast. We're doing it live today, and this is really, man, we are so glad you decided to join us because this is really, I think, a valuable thing because, Ken, what we decided to do today is we want to connect with the local church. By the way, this is Ken Adams. Let me introduce him. Ken Adams is the director and founder of Impact Ministries. My name is Ron, and we have a really special guest here today. His name is Scott McInnis, and he is the community outreach pastor at Crossroads Church.
That's right.
And so, man, it's going to be a great time. We're going to focus in today, like we have been doing, on how do we flesh out becoming a disciple-making church, and really just kind of the nuts and bolts of doing that. And so here's what we'd love you to do. Is share this. Even now, if you're thinking of somebody, man, they need to see this, like this, share this. And we're so glad that you're here on this last day of summer. Did you know that, Ken?
You know, I think I saw that. Yeah.
Until 9 tonight, Eastern time, it is summer.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Fall is a great time to be talking about these kinds of things. So, Scott, we're so glad that you are here.
Yeah.
And so, Ken, today I think we're going to be really kind of fleshing out this idea of what does it look like to be a disciple-making church. So really, what are we going to be kind of fleshing out?
Yeah, so, just piggybacking on what you said, we kind of retooled our podcast recently, this concept of disciple-making church being really a podcast that people could come to hear how it looks like in a real church setting where people are just trying to flesh out really the mandate of Jesus to go and make disciples of all nations. And what does that look like in a local church? And so you're exactly right. We are actually just trying to give nuts and bolts and real tools for how that looks. And so clearly one of the very first places that you start is as a church. In order to make disciples, you got to reach the culture, right? You got to reach the culture. And so the goal is that, we want to share Christ with everybody and anybody that we can. But ultimately, if we're going to help people become fully trained disciples, is that we're hoping that they'll step into our church. And we're hoping that they'll become a part of a disciple-making process that really is the reason that our church exists. We're trying to help people go from being untrained seekers to becoming fully trained disciples. And so we like to think of it like this. We like to think that, if you came up to my house, and you came up to visit or to see me or have dinner or whatever, pretty good chance you're coming to the front door, right? Now, you go to some people's houses, front door ain't been open in years. But you come to my house, you're probably going to go to the front door. You're probably not going through the garage unless you're family, unless you've been there before.
It's true.
But if it's your first time and you've not been in that house before, you're probably coming to the front door. And that's the entryway. So in the same way that we have a front door to our church, guess what? To our house, we need a front door to the church. We need to have a door where people know this is a way to get into the life of our church. And if they take that step, then we have a much higher percentage of them taking other. But the odds are, if they don't take that first step, they're not taking any other steps, or probably not going to take the steps that you have. So, a lot of times people talk about, are we trying? Are we missional or are we attractional? Man, we're both. We are trying to be missional in the sense of we're taking the gospel to people that need it, but we're also trying to invite people to come and check out what God's doing in our church, because we need to be a part of the body of Christ. So there is a door. In fact, here at our church, we actually have what we call 5 doors that people can walk through to become a part of our church. And so, Scott, you lead some of this, so just walk us through, kind of give us an explanation. What are those 5 doors?
Yeah, well, so, in Coweta County where we are, I know that there's over 60,000 people that don't have a church home. And so the need to reach out is great. And I know that's true, wherever you are.
Right.
The need is so great. And so we have these doors, just like you're talking about, that people can walk through. And, the first one is personal invites. And I think that that's the one that most people are familiar with. Inviting people to come, having that personal invite, inviting your neighbor, inviting your relative, inviting your coworker, the people that are closest to you, kind of in your, sphere of influence. Those are the people that you can reach out to and invite. And here at Crossroads, we have lots of tools that help people do that. We have invite cards that we provide people. They can invite, use that. We also have the other doors that help people or kind of act as tools to help them invite.
And by the way, there's a guy that comes to our church now. He's been coming for over 30 years. That I connected with him in a gym where we worked out together, and he didn't come right away, but years down the road, he ended up coming into the life of our church and is still in that process of becoming a fully trained disciple, because at some point I invited him and said, hey, why don't you just come check it out? Why don't you just come and see?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the one that people remember.
Yeah.
That's the one that if you said, how did you come to Crossroads? They would
Somebody
say
invited
somebody invited me.
Yeah.
It might be 10 other things that happen.
Yeah.
But that's the one that they're going to remember. Somebody invited me to Crossroads.
So the second door would be like a servant project, right?
Exactly.
What's that mean?
The second door is like servant evangelism projects, and they're things like they can range from passing out water bottles at a Home Depot, or a building project, helping someone build a wheelchair ramp for their house, or doing something in the community like working with local government, local officials to help build a park. It can range from very small projects to very big projects, and involve 10 people in a small group to involving the entire church. And doing those things, really while you're serving people, while you're meeting kind of a felt need, that's a great opportunity to invite them to come to Crossroads.
And I think one of the things that I think we've seen really effective is just serving teachers in school systems and going in and and feeding them and things like that. Right?
Yeah, we've had such a great impact with that. So we have 32 schools in Coweta County. We've got about half of those that have been adopted by small groups. And throughout the year, we do lunches and prayer cards and do special things for custodians or the SRO officers, or different days throughout the year. They're constantly in there. And we just recently had somebody that said, through the pandemic, they were watching church online. They watched us a couple of times, and they said when they decided to come back to church, they decided to come to Crossroads because our church was so consistent with being in the school and serving. It's a teacher at East Coweta High School.
Yeah.
And she was very, very specific about, hey, you guys were there through the whole thing. You were consistent, and so when we wanted to pick a church, we wanted to come to Crossroads.
And you remember a year or two ago, right after all the stress and strain, or sort of it really it's still in the middle of the stress and strain of the pandemic. We went and fed all of the workers at our local hospital and set up a food truck and fed all these people. And I think what happens is that you have people that you might be serving, but then when you come back with a personal invite, or you've invited somebody and then our church shows up and serves, all these things work together, because just the serving itself is typically not a high yield type of outreach. It's something that you might not see a quick return on that like you would a personal invite, but when you combine the two together, it starts to add up. What's the third one?
The third one is special days and events, and that's something that we love to do. I think we have a couple of days a year that are no-brainers, like Christmas and Easter. Those are special days. People typically are looking for a church to come to on those days, and you should really make as much effort as you can to make those days as special as possible for the people that come. Put your best foot forward. But there are also other opportunities, throughout the year that, we can do things that are kind of on that attractional end, what you're talking about. I know there's a debate about attractional, missional, whatever. I think we should do both, just like what you were saying. But, to have an opportunity to do something that it really, for me, it's not about being attractional. It's about providing tools to the congregation that allows them to reach out to the community and invite their friends. Just another, somebody might not come to a church service, but if you do an event like we have an amphitheater. We just recently did Big Top and Barbecue, where we had some circus entertainers come in and we had a barbecue. We had a huge group of people come, 500 first-time guests.
Wow.
I mean, what event do you do, or what service do you have in the year that you have 500 opportunities to make a first impression?
Yeah.
And so, I mean,
you don't even have that many on an Easter weekend. You don't have that many guests.
It's an enormous amount of first-time guests.
Good.
And so, and it's also an opportunity. So this is kind of a sidetrack. I don't know if I'm allowed to do it, but we also do something called Reaching Our World, right? We do a class to train people to, to reach out, to have a plan, and so for those people that have taken the class, this is an opportunity for them to put that into practice. That's right there. It's easy for them to invite somebody to come and be a part of that. And so our events that we do outside of those special days, like Christmas, Easter, Mother's Day, really have a big impact in the community in that we see a lot of first-time guests.
And then there's a couple of times of the year, a lot of times when you go into the fall, that's a season where a lot of people are coming back off of vacation, getting ready to get back into a routine school year, looking for a church to be a part of. Same thing happens at the first of the year, because a lot of people are starting off the new year trying to make changes in their life. And so it is so important to leverage those opportunities with lots of ways to encourage folks to come and take a step.
I think we have one coming up, right? I mean, we have a big holiday or a festival time in our season. So we've done some stuff also at around Halloween and that kind of thing. What's some stuff?
I don't know if we can say Halloween. Can we say Halloween?
I think so.
It's a fall festival.
Fall festival. So in the past, we've had an opportunity to do something. We call it Fall Rush. And we have a lot of small groups, and they're all spread out all over Coweta County. And we had been doing something at the church, but we thought, what a great day when everybody is coming to knock on your door, to have an opportunity where our small groups scattered all throughout Coweta County could do a special thing in their neighborhood, like a block party, bouncy house, or pass out candy, but also pass out invites and really make those connections to the culture.
World's coming to your door, right?
Exactly.
I mean, they're coming right to you. And so what a great time to have fun with your small group fellowship, but also just connect with people in your neighborhood, talk about the day and then say, hey, if you don't have a church home, come to Crossroads.
Personal invite.
How about the small groups? We call them discovery groups here.
Yeah, so we have, that's one of the doors that we have is discovery groups. And discovery groups are, they're very, they're not like a Bible study that you would have in your house. It's not a traditional small group. It's more of an evangelistic kind of small group that is meeting a felt need.
Right.
So if you're like, you have a couple hundred houses in your neighborhood, you can go, you pass out flyers and say, hey, we're having a marriage seminar
for like 5 weeks.
For like 5 weeks. And you come and you might get 10 couples to come to your house. Maybe they don't go to church anywhere, maybe they do, but they come and you have just a really great discussion about ways to make your marriage better. And you don't hide anything. It's not a bait and switch. But you're really focusing on the marriage side of it. But by the end of it, you've had such an opportunity to connect with people and develop relationships with them that the invite to Crossroads is natural at the end of it.
We've done a number of these small groups, particularly the marriage groups, and it is always fruitful in some regard. Either somebody comes to know Christ accepts Christ, or somebody comes and checks out the church, becomes a huge, part of our church. I mean, there has never been a single one that I've done that hasn't had some sort of a great, fruitful opportunity to come out of it. So
yeah, I mean, you're really meeting that felt need up front.
Oh yeah.
Because people are struggling with their marriages. People are
Yeah.
struggling with their families. We had one that was a health, like not
Yeah.
a weight loss thing, but healthy
Yeah.
living
Yeah.
kind of one. And I think all of those are felt needs that
Yeah.
so many people have in our community. And so if we can begin by meeting that,
Absolutely.
it gives us a great
Yeah.
strategic way to invite them.
And then nowadays you have a lot of social media and advertising. We still believe advertising is an effective way doing a direct mail piece. I know a lot of people maybe don't do as much advertising, but it's still a very effective way of getting the word to a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it's crazy not to. I mean, because we have so many people. I mean, if you look around, if you go to a restaurant, if you go anywhere, everybody's on their phone. And they're looking at Facebook, they're looking at Instagram, they're looking
That's
at
right.
whatever thing they look at.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you have people in your church that are, reposting things that, invites to the new sermon series that we're doing. If you get your congregation involved in reposting those kind of things, you hit hundreds and thousands of people, with that. And that's one of those things that somebody sees it and then they go, they kind of put it in the back of their mind, and then they see us out, doing a servant evangelism project.
Yeah.
And then when their neighbor invites them to come to one of the events, they're more likely to come because that's been there.
Yeah, and a couple things here. You've probably heard this a time or two that for a person to usually come to a church and hear more about Christ or whatever, it usually requires multiple contacts.
That's right.
Yeah.
It usually is not a one-time, hey, why don't you come to our church, or hey, can I talk with you about your relationship with God. Usually it takes 3, 4, 5, sometimes even as many as 7 contacts for that person to eventually say, you know what, maybe I need to check this out.
And it doesn't cost a lot. It's not like you have to have a huge budget to do social media.
Right.
Every church can do something with
Oh,
social
yeah.
media,
Yeah.
and put invites out there, and it's a great way, a great tool to reach out to so many people in your community.
And this is what's crazy is that so many churches, and this is where I think we have some nuts and bolts here to help people, is that so many churches have no idea that this ought to be a part of an annual plan.
Yeah.
That there ought to be a plan where you get it on your calendar, you budget dollars to make it happen, and then you actually are very strategic, because at the end of the day, if we're making disciples, we got to be reaching people.
Yeah. Right.
At the end of the day, if you're not reaching people, you're not making disciples. If you're not making disciples, you're not fulfilling the mission that Jesus gave the church 2,000 years ago.
Right. Amen.
And so you got to set up whether your church year starts when the school year starts, like ours, or whether it starts in January or whatever the case is, that needs to be a part of an annual strategic plan that your church has. You got to have an outreach piece of that plan.
I mean, think about how, like the super sauce for all of this is that if you're strategic and you make it a part of your annual plan, and you do things like, at the beginning of a season, say you have an outreach season, you do something, you do your evangelism training, or you're reaching our world class, right? You do that at the beginning, and you start to train people, and then from there you do a servant evangelism project. We're going to start handing out baskets to people that they move into the neighborhood, new movers. We're going to hand out hundreds of baskets to people coming up here very soon, and but we're going to do a class to talk about having a personal plan for reaching our world. And then we're going to have a servant evangelism project, right? And then that servant evangelism project can lead to, maybe we do a couple of those, right? And then we have discovery groups that connect to the plan. And then you have that special day, or, the big event that you have. And at that event, you can invite people to a new teaching series, that's coming up.
Yeah.
And then from the new teaching series, you say, hey, come to our next steps process.
Yeah.
And then once they get in that, it's I don't even know the right word. It's huge to get somebody into that spot. So you're reaching out to the culture, and then strategically you're moving people to that point where the goal is to get them there. And that doesn't just happen. You know, I mean, to line up a teaching series with a special event, it takes a lot of planning.
Right.
You know, to have that, you know, reaching our world class before all of that starts, you have to have it in your planning early on.
Yeah, so I love the fact that that's not just winging it. That's not just random stuff thrown on a calendar. That's very strategic, very intentional in order to help people to come and see, come and hear, you know, what Christ can do in their life. So let me tie some of this together real quick. One is that you know, the reason that all this is important is because the entire movement of Christianity started 2,000 years ago with an invitation. Jesus said to a couple of John's disciples, "Come and see, come and see." Now, if that worked 2,000 years ago, why in the world would we think that we need to do something different today? You know, everything that we're talking about here today all comes back to the model and to the example that Jesus gave us.
Right.
And Jesus started the movement of Christianity, accomplishing the mission of making disciples, with 2 words or 3 words: come and see. He started it off with an invitation. And all of these doors that we're talking about are ultimately just different ways for us to be personally inviting people.
That's right.
So we might do a servant project, but we want to invite people. It's still all about relationships. So people reach people, not programs. And so we want to go into a home and do a marriage group because that creates relational environment. We want to go to the schools or fire departments over and over again because it creates a relational connection. We want to you know, to do servant projects, and we even want to do social media with our friends, our peer groups. You know, so ultimately, it's all about relationships, people reaching people, not programs. Programs don't reach people; people do. And then, really, the last thing is that you know, this is ultimately all about getting a first step toward several steps of becoming a fully trained disciple. You know, you know that instead of, you know, if you're all you're doing is making converts, if that's all you're doing, just making converts, then you can just, you know, have Christ conversations, gospel conversations, help people come, and that's it. But if you're looking to help people come to know Christ, identify with Christ through baptism, and then grow in Christ and become a fully trained disciple, then that's a part of being a process. I have people tell me this all the time. They say, well, I know you guys are really big into discipleship. Well, you know what? To a degree, that's true, but really it's about much more than that. We're really into disciple making. And disciple making includes discipleship and evangelism. Jesus never separated the two. Jesus connected the two together, and that's how you're going to change the world. And so I think it's ironic that some people who think that we're just about discipleship have no idea how much time, energy, and effort we put into an outreach plan, because ultimately you can't make disciples if people are not coming to know Christ and giving their lives to Him and following Him in baptism. So yeah, I think this is all hopefully very helpful and very beneficial to people that are thinking through how do we reach our community, how do we reach the culture, and how do we make disciples. And in fact, Ryan, I don't know if you want to talk about this or not, but we have a resource called Reaching Our World that we can make available to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And man, this has been fantastic stuff, guys. I mean, seriously, this is really where the rubber meets the road for churches. And you know, we hope that you're watching this because you want to figure out how do you become a disciple-making pastor, a disciple-making church. We're here to help you do that.
Yeah.
That's what this blog is about. And so we have this resource. We have some other resources on our website, impactdisciples.com. But maybe you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, I can't do all that. That's a lot. Like, I'm a small church, or I don't have a big budget, but really, we would just encourage you to first start thinking strategically. What is your doors into the community? How do you connect? And based on our budget, what are the things that we can do? Maybe it's just you connect in the community just one place.
Yeah, and it really and truly, I mean, we've been hammering this out for 33 years, and we've been doing a lot of these things since our church was just started out in the school. So it scales, but the concepts are really, they're you can do it at every single stage of the life of a church.
That's exactly right. So, you might hear all these things and say, there's no way we could do all that. Listen, we say this all the time, right? Start somewhere.
Yeah, that's good.
And sit down and with your team. You are the team. But sit down, begin to say, in this coming year, on this first day of fall, we're going to at least begin to think strategically about how do we connect with our culture and begin to invite them into the crowd. Right. How do we invite them to come and see?
Right. Yeah, it's not going to happen by accident.
It's not.
You got to be intentional. You got to have a plan.
That's good.
And you can't sit around and just hope people walk in. You got to ask them.
Hope is not a plan.
Hope is not a plan.
Yeah,
I've heard that somewhere.
Yeah. So we hope this encourages you. We hope this challenges you. We don't want it to be overwhelming. I don't think so. It's exciting, really. And at Impact Disciples, we really want to come alongside you and help you and be a resource for you. A number of ways we can do that is if you go to our website, you can request someone to actually give you a call. We'll actually sit down and kind of walk you through some of these things. Yeah. Look at what's going on at your church and maybe help you even come up with a plan for opening up some doors to your community. We can come and at some point maybe do a disciple-making church.
Yes.
Something really cool if you're a pastor here and this is something that God is stirring in your heart to really make a priority in your life. We actually have a disciple-making pastor training online, and so the date for that is actually October 27th. Pastor Ken will be leading that online. Man, there's a cost involved, but it is well worth every penny that'll be done. So we'll invite you to that. And then longer term, although not that far away, January of 23, we have the Disciple Making Summit coming up at the end of January. You don't want to miss that.
You don't want to
miss that. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, that's a good.
And so you guys have any final thoughts or any ideas about any final word?
Have a plan.
Yeah.
Have a plan. Okay. Be strategic. Be intentional. The cost is too high. Lots of people need Jesus out there, and you got to go out there and reach them.
Yeah. If Jesus came to seek and to save the lost, how do we not?
Wow. Good challenging words at the very end here. And so this thing is all about going and being and building disciples. So we want to challenge you to do that. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.